Let me ask a bit of a human question. Charles Hoskinson, someone you've worked with in the early days of Ethereum, there appears, to my outsider view, to have been a bit of a falling out. Is there a positive, inspiring human story to be told about why you two parted ways?
I kind of want to let the various books about Ethereum speak for themselves. But I feel like, since that time, I think, Charles has clearly progressed and matured in a lot of ways. And people who follow Charles closely have definitely told me that, 2021 Charles is very different from 2014 Charles. And I'm sure 2021 Vitalik is much different from 2014 Vitalik as well.
I'm kind of interested how the 2030 and 2040 Vitalik and Charles look like as well.
Interesting.
like the progression of the humans.
Is this going to be one of those things where everyone comes full circle and then 2030 Vitalik and Charles are best friends?
Yeah. That some kind of are able to reminisce in ways that puts some of the tension of the past behind.
I think such things are possible. People definitely, absolutely have a right to, and I think should strive to just constantly change and reinvent themselves.
Is there something you could say about your thoughts about the Cardano project that Charles Hoskinson leads? They worked on some interesting ideas, mirror some of the ideas in Ethereum, proof of stake, working on smart contracts and all those kinds of things. Is there something, again, positive, inspiring that you could say? Are they a competitor? Is it complementary technology?
And there's definitely interesting ideas in there. I do think Cardano takes a bit of a different approach than Ethereum in that, they really emphasize having these big academic proofs for everything. Ethereum tends to be more okay with heuristic arguments, and in part because it's just trying to do more faster. There's definitely very interesting things that come out of IOHK research.
Can you comment on that kind of idea? I, as sort of having a foot in research, enjoy Charles's kind of emphasis on papers and deep academic rigor. What's the role of deep research rigor in the world of cryptocurrency?
Interesting. I'm actually the sort of person who thinks deep rigor is overrated. The reason why I think deep rigor is overrated is because I think the in terms of why protocols fail, I think the number of failures that are outside the model is even more important, is bigger and more important than the failures that are inside the model. Right. So if you take selfish mining, for example, that original discovery from 2013 that showed Bitcoin does, even if it has a 50% fault tolerance, assuming everyone's honest, it only has a 0 to 33% fault tolerance, depending on your network model, if you assume rational actors. And to me, that was a great example of an outside the model failure, right? Because traditional consensus research, just up until or before the blockchain days, did not think about incentivization much, right? There was a little bit of thought about incentivization. There's a couple of papers on the Byzantine altruist rational model, but it wasn't that deep. It was mostly operating under the assumption that we're going to make consensus between 15 participants in these institutions. And if something goes wrong, then, if it was, we can figure out whether or not it was deliberate offline. And if they did something evil, we can sue them. Whereas, in the crypto world, you can't do that. Right. And so that whole discovery basically arose just because the model of traditional consensus research just didn't cover those possibilities. And then once you go out of that model, those other issues do exist. But then at the same time, there definitely are protocols that do have failures inside the model. This reminds me of the time when I think I found a bug in a proposed consensus implementation from either BitShares or EOS. This happened around the end of 2017. So that was definitely inside the model because they had a very clear idea of what they were trying to achieve. They had a very clear description, and there's a very clear mathematical argument for why the description doesn't lead to what they're trying to achieve. But ultimately, what you're trying to achieve can never be fully described in formal language, right? I think this is the big discovery of the AI safety people, for example, right? Just having a specification of what you want is an insanely hard problem. And the more powerful the optimizer that you're giving the instructions to, the more you have to be careful. And so, I think there are kind of these two sides. And then the other thing is that a lot of the academic approach ends up like basically optimizing for other people inside of the academic system.
Right.
And it doesn't really optimize curious outsiders. Whereas like I personally, Matt, like totally optimize for curious outsiders, or at least I feel like I strive to. So I guess like that's my case for why I like tends to behave in ways that, occasionally traditional academic types criticize as being reckless. But I mean, on the other hand, there's definitely real benefits that come from taking a rigorous approach, especially when, you know what the specification is of what you're trying to get. And like, you're trying to kind of improve your way or provide protocols that actually provide that. And like, you know exactly what you're looking for. I feel like realistically, you probably want to do both kinds of analysis. And like sometimes you even want to do both kinds of analysis in stages, right? Like you want to do more quick and dirty things, and you even want public feedback on the quick and dirty stuff. And then later on you formalize it more, and then you get more feedback. Like in general, I guess I feel like the norms of research in the future, like the internet has just changed so much. There's no way that it's not going, and it's even changed like collaboration structures and like the patterns in which we work with each other. There's no way that the correct structure for collaborative research is the same as what it was 15 years ago. But like, what combination of these existing components and of new ideas it is, like that's something that's totally legitimate to kind of fight it out. And I think it's great that there's different ecosystems that have different attitudes to things. Like I think there's a big possibility that things that the Ethereum ways that the Ethereum ecosystem approaches some problems is totally wrong. And if there's other ecosystems with different principles and they do well, that's something that we can learn